Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the March 12th, 2019 School Board of Seminole County School Board meeting. At this point in time, I'd like to point out that all school board members are in attendance, in addition to our legal counsel and superintendent. And I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Sanchez, who will lead us in our invocation and pledge, please.
Good evening. I had someone share some inspirational story with me a couple days ago, and I thought it'd be a great time to share it with you. It's called the Starfish Story. One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up and gently throwing things into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "Young man, what are you doing?" The boy replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they're going to die." The man laughed to himself and said, "Do you realize that there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down and picked up another starfish, and he threw it into the air and into the surf. Then, smiling at the man, he said, "I made a difference to that one." And the moral of the story is, we can make a difference one at a time, and we all can. I hope everyone has a happy and safe spring break. Enjoy being with your friends and your loved ones. Now, can we please stand for the pledge? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. I'd now like to acknowledge some people in the audience with us here this evening. Sandra Maldonado-Ross, our SEA president. Bobby Aganina, Vice President of SEA, Judy Ning with Lake Howell High School, Seminole Education Association, Melissa Pugh, Seminole County Council, PTA, Tina McClory, SECA Vice President, and thank you all for being here this evening. Dr. Griffin, do you have any agenda modifications for us this evening?
Just one, Madam Chair. The addendum for good cause is marked on our electronic agenda by a green flag named addendum item.
Thank you. And I would also like to make an agenda modification to delete the board member comment section so we can continue on with our board agenda this evening. I appreciate that. So at this point in time, I will entertain if anybody has any questions or clarifying issues with anything on our consent agenda.
I have no modifications at this time.
Okay, I'd like to assign on item 4K to serve on that RFP committee in consultation with the clerk. It's my turn, so I'll be serving on that. Do we have an approval of the agenda outline, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Griffin, we have a few presentations this evening.
Yes, we do, starting with our Veteran of the Month.
Dr. Griffin and board members, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. William Bowes as our Seminole County Public Schools veteran for March 2019. Mr. Bowes is currently the head custodian at Castleberry Elementary, home of the Pandas, and was nominated by his principal Miss Mallory Holliday. He has been with SCPS for almost 7 years, and according to Miss Holliday, he does an outstanding job in his role as head custodian. Mr. Bose joined the United States Navy in 1982 and completed his basic training at Recruit Training Center in Orlando, Florida. Mr. Bose then went to Hospital Corpsman School at Great Lakes Training Center just outside of Chicago. Following completion of his hospital corpsman training, he was stationed at the Naval Hospital at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, for his entire enlistment period, where he supported both the Marine Corps and naval personnel stationed there. Mr. Bose received several ribbons and awards for his service and had his enlistment extended on 2 occasions at the request of the United States Navy. Upon separation from active duty, Mr. Bose was transferred to the United States Naval Reserve. Joining Mr. Bose tonight is his wife, Donna. Thank you for your service, William, and congratulations on being selected as Veteran of the Month for March.
Board members, this evening it's my pleasure to introduce Pastor Dwayne Mercer and Tim Dix from CrossLife Church. And I want to just pause to publicly recognize them for doing something they didn't have to do. Probably about 3 months ago, Pastor Mercer invited me and Rick Lee to lunch at the townhouse. Actually to breakfast at the townhouse. And really we're just asking what they could do to support the schools. And he had an idea, and the idea was to learn more about our county safety plan and to accelerate that plan a little bit. And in a very short time, he was a man of his word, man of action, and a few weeks ago, they invited me to 2 of the services and presented Seminole County Public Schools with a check for $77,000. So, Pastor Mercer, come on up.
Well, thank you so much, Walt. It is a privilege to be here tonight. And about a year ago, I was praying about what we could do as a church there in Oviedo to really help the community. And Parkland shootings had just taken place. And so I got together with Walt and Rick Lee, set that up for us, and got a chance to talk with him. And he was just all for us doing something to help out, to partner with you guys. And so our goal was actually to raise $50,000 so we could help out Oviedo High School and Haggerty High School and supplying them with cameras. As the Sheriff's Department said, that was the biggest need that we could help with. And the rest of it just going also to the middle schools. But we were able to raise the $77,471. Is that right, Tim? And exactly, to be exact. I brought him so we could be exact on that. And it was just a privilege to work with Walt and the team here. And we just consider it a privilege. And thank you so much for just allowing us to help.
Thank you for inviting us to present our donation this evening. My name is Kevin Miller. I'm here with my team from CFE, soon to be Addition Financial. As a credit union founded by local teachers, we're very proud to partner with SCPS. This year, We have a check for you for $12,832.77 from our School Affinity debit card program. Over the years since we started this program, this brings our total to $139,332.77. We view the school district debit card program as another unique way for us to give directly to the district. Our roots in education have shaped who we are as a credit union for more than 80 years, as we believe that empowering our community begins in the classroom. Along with this donation, this school year, we opened our newest student-run branch at Lake Howell High School, a program we're proud to grow each year. Through our student district debit card program, we offer co-branded debit cards, give a donation back to Seminole County Schools every time someone uses them. As we continue to grow and transition into Addition Financial, our new name will allow us to provide even better service, additional benefits for more people. However, our dedication to supporting education in Seminole County Public Schools is not changing. Financial education will remain at the heart of all that we do. We're proud of our partnership with the Seminole County School District through our high school branches, our district debit card program, and other various donations. We appreciate you guys being such great partners of ours in education and beyond. Can't wait to see how we can continue to add to the SCPS community. Thank you.
Fortunately, we don't have a check for you. No, we don't have a check for you. Sorry. I know. I was thinking that the whole time that it was a hard act to follow. Good evening. On February 23rd, 2019, we had our second annual Walk 5K, Kids Dash and Wellness Fair. We are happy to report that we had over 1,500 attendees, 50 wellness vendors, and a lot of family-friendly events for our employees and their families. I want to take a moment to thank all the people who assisted in making the Walk a huge success. First, I would like to take a moment to thank my amazing benefits team, as well as our on-site staff from Cigna, as well as Andrea Herr and Tanya Garino from Highland. I also would like to take a moment to thank Michael Lawrence's marketing team for designing the wildly popular Walk logo and all the communication they sent to promote our event. I cannot say enough about the support provided by Dr. Mickey Reynolds, Stephen Longarzo, Doug Peters, and Rick Wires from Lake Mary High. They spent endless hours assisting us with the logistics so that our event could go off seamlessly. We also want to highlight all of our volunteers from Lake Mary High, including the ROTC, cheerleaders, drumline, Beta Club, Young Men and Women of Excellence, as well as a shout out to Missa Mills from Community Involvement for supplying numerous dividends. Finally, I want to thank Dr. Griffin and the board for their continued support and dedication in helping our employees be as healthy as they can be. It was a true group effort that made the difference. Once again, thanks to all of you for making the second annual Walk a huge success.
board members, and Dr. Griffin. I'd like to introduce to you our new assistant principal for Lair Elementary School, our niece, Denise Sawyer. Miss Sawyer grew up in Miami. She graduated from Florida A&M University and taught for 9 years in Leon and Orange County schools and elementary schools. She was awarded Teacher of the Year in 2014 from Appalachia Tapestry Magnet School in Leon County. She also became the first Leon County School District instructional elementary math coach for 2 years before becoming an assistant principal in Gadsden County. This year, she has been teaching at Hamilton Elementary School, serving in the capacity of the K through 2 math instructional coach under the leadership of Mr. Mike Pfeiffer and Assistant Principal Adrian Fuller. Tonight with her are her new principal, Ms. Nicholas at Lair Elementary School, her father, Carlton Sawyer, and her friends Shatika and Shafara, and then Heather and Linda from Hamilton Elementary are here to support her as well. So why don't all of you stand up and be recognized as well. Congratulations, our niece.
Good evening, school board members and Dr. Griffin. Tonight I am pleased to introduce our newest assistant principal in middle school, Ms. Melissa K. Hager, assistant principal at Jackson Heights Middle School. Ms. Hager earned a bachelor's degree in pre-K primary education from the University of North Florida. She obtained a master's degree in educational leadership from the University of North Florida. She has served as an elementary school teacher and instructional coach in Duval County. When coming to Seminole County, she served as an academic interventionist at Teague Middle School and the digital learning coach at Lake Mary High School, which is her alma mater and home to her 2 sons. Joining her tonight at the board meeting are her parents, Keith and Pam Sherry, her boyfriend, John Wagner, and her children, Bradley and Jacob Hager. Next, I would like to introduce the newest principal in middle school, Mr. Martin Dunlop, principal of Rock Lake Middle School. Mr. Dunlop earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in Social Studies Education from the University of Central Florida and a Master's of Arts degree in Curriculum and Instruction and a Specialist degree in Educational Leadership from Nova Southeastern University. He is currently pursuing the doctorate in educational leadership from American College of Education. Mr. Dunlop has spent 12 years of his career at Sanford Middle School, where he taught social studies for 7 years, served as a dean for a year, and was an assistant principal for 4 years. Most recently, Mr. Dunlop served as an assistant principal at Jackson Heights Middle School. He is also a product of Seminole County Public Schools and an alumnus of Lake Howell High School. Joining him tonight is his wife, Julissa Dunlop, and the current Jackson Heights Middle School administrative team, Assistant Principal Claudemie Pierre, Principal Sarah Manser, and Principal of Tuscaloosa, who is a former principal of Sanford Middle School, Mr. Randy Schuler.
Good evening, Dr. Griffin and board members. Please join me in welcoming the new Associate School Board Attorney, Mr. Greg Johnson. Greg received his Associate of Science from the University of Central Florida and his Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from Orlando College. He then attended law school at the University of Houston in Texas and has been practicing for the past 25 years, including at Hillsborough County Attorney's Office and in private practice, most recently at Garganese, Weiss, DeGresta, and Salzman. He is an AV-rated Martindale-Hubbell attorney, and we are very happy to have him join the Legal Services Department. He currently resides in Oviedo with his wife and 2 of his 3 children. And with him tonight is his wife, Miss Maria Canarosi.
I knew, Ms. Sanchez, you wanted to stand a little longer. He doesn't know what I'm doing. Since 1975, the National Association for Bilingual Education, NABE, has been a nonprofit membership organization that works to advocate for educational equity and academic excellence for bilingual and multilingual students in a global society. NABE's priorities include improving instructional programs and practices for linguistically and culturally diverse children, providing bilingual and dual language educators with high-quality professional development opportunities, securing adequate funding for quality dual language programs serving English language learners, and keeping the rights of English language learners clearly in focus as states and communities move forward with sustainable educational reforms. It is with great honor that I recognize our very own Dr. Walt Griffin, our superintendent, as the 2019 honorary chair. Dr. Griffin's continued support for English language learners is reflected in our district's elementary world languages and dual language schools models, as well as his ongoing willingness to serve as a speaker at many NABE and ESOL events, many of which have over 1,500 educators in attendance. Congratulations, Dr. Griffin. And it is also a great honor that I recognize Mrs. Minnie Cardona. Our Director of ESOL World Languages and Student Access as co-chair of the NABE conference. Mrs. Cardona is recognized locally, statewide, and nationally for her passion for educating all students and her support of her teachers. She can be found at the ESC and throughout the county on many, many evenings and Saturdays, proudly working with our ESOL students, teachers, and families. Congratulations, Mrs. Cardona, and thank you for all you do for us.
That was a surprise. I thought you were calling Minnie out. I'm like, what?
And Dr. Griffin, do you have a recommendation on our consent agenda, please?
Yes, I do. That the consent agenda be approved as presented.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Any student disciplinary hearings? Dr. Griffin.
My recommendation is that the School Board of Seminole County approve the student disciplinary recommendations from February 19th, 2019 and February 25th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. This is now our public comment section of our board meeting. If anyone wishes to address the board, there are forms on the back table. I'd like to invite Mrs. Almond at this point in time to share our decorum rules.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The public input segment of the meeting is provided for the purpose of permitting persons to present specific matters to the board for its consideration and action or referral to the superintendent and his staff. The public input section of the meeting is not open to presentations of campaign issues by political candidates, matters involving student disciplinary actions, pending employee disciplinary matters, or pending litigation. Each individual member of the public is limited to 3 minutes, and a designated group representative may have up to 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Almond. I'd like to first call Mr. Greg Topolewski, and then after him would be Giselle Gonzalez. Good evening and welcome.
Allowing me to speak tonight. Greg Topoleski. I live across the street from Lake Mary High School in the Remington Oaks subdivision, and we're seeing an increased problem with student parking through the neighborhoods this year. It's been an issue since I've been there for the 25 years, but something seems to have changed, and it is 10 times worse than we've ever seen it. We are having safety issues. We're having disruptions in services, people having contractors coming to their house or just leaving because they can't park. Personally, we care for my elderly mother-in-law. We have a nurse that comes 3 days a week and an aide that comes every day that has not been able to park or has to park blocks away and walk. And we're looking, one, to make sure that the school board is aware of this and ask you to be a partner in the solution to help us find what can we do to resolve this issue. And I'm not really sure of the specific cause. Is it strictly there's no space at Lake Mary High School? Is it the parking fees are too high and they just don't want to pay them? Is it something in between? Is it that only juniors and seniors are allowed to park? But it's affecting us. It's affecting middle school and elementary school buses have been told they're not going to come through our neighborhoods anymore. And to me, that says that the school board is causing its school board issue with its buses, and it's affecting us. It's affecting our kids' safety. I hear the fees are very high to park at the high school, but I don't see that those fees are doing anything to improve parking, and maybe I just don't know, but is there anything going on to improve the parking and to get our neighborhood back? We need some help with this, and we'd really like you to not, people have went to the school. Our neighbors have went to Lake Mary High School, and one of them told me that it's not our problem, or they've just pretty much said, we're not going to help. We'd like a better answer than that. We'd like to really reclaim our neighborhood.
Thank you. I have a quick question. Do you have a homeowners association?
We do. As a matter of fact, there's a meeting this month that is entirely devoted to what can we do. And one, we'd love to have you join us. It's the last Monday of the month at the Greenwood Lakes Library. And we don't want to turn our neighborhood into, put up gates so nobody can come in. We don't want to make our entire no parking in our neighborhood. That hurts us. And we would like the school to be a good neighbor and help us solve this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Giselle Gonzalez, and then David Marini, please.
All right.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for coming, or for letting me come to speak. We actually have a neighborhood posting, and we did say that we were going to come here, so I'm addressing the same issue. And I just want to say that I moved to the same neighborhood, Remington Oaks, about 3 years ago, and it really drew me into the neighborhood because we had the park across the street, we have the middle school across the street, we have the library. I have one of my little girls who's completely ignoring me, a 9-year-old right there, and I also have a daughter in middle school, so she walks to school, and that's one of the things that drew me to the school. When I first moved in, my favorite part was getting home from work, a long, busy week, getting there Friday, and hearing the drum major and hearing the activities that you see at the school. So it was really a nice, positive note. Lately, it's been nothing but a negative note. We have, I would estimate, and I haven't counted, but anywhere from 50 to 60 cars coming through and parking in our neighborhoods. As of this past Monday, they did move. There was one school bus that had 3 stops for the elementary schools, and they were moved out of our neighborhood into a main street. So now all the kids have to walk out of our neighborhood and stop at the corner on a main street. That's not okay. So we are putting our little guys, our 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds out on the street because of high schoolers parking in our neighborhood. So if the bus went out and someone from transportation here did go to our neighborhood and watch and they said the school bus cannot get through, there's nothing we can do. If you can get these cars out of here, we will bring the school bus stops back to your neighborhood, but right now we can't. So if our school buses can't get through, what is next? Fire trucks, ambulances? What else cannot get through? We really need your help. We're having our meeting on the 25th. There's people that have lived there 30 years. To triple our dues, to put gates up, I don't think that that's an answer. So I'm hoping that you guys come. I know it's also the Taste of the City of Lake Mary, and I'm gonna miss that, but this is very important. It's important to our little guys, it's important to our neighbors, and it's caused a big disruption. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And Mr. David Marini, please.
Alrighty, check, check. Wow, I'm tall. Okay. Yeah, I think it's fine. Alrighty, good evening, Superintendent, Chairwoman, members of the school board. I'd like to point out that the point of school is, to teach us things. Now, don't get me wrong, the school system can still effectively teach math, English, the sciences, etc. However, the school system fails at teaching us practical skills, skills used in everyday life, such as managing money, paying taxes, even changing a tire. These are skills every student wants to learn, as proven by the number of students taking adulting classes outside of school time to learn these necessary skills. Not to mention the starkly decreasing rate of financial literacy in the U.S. is a crisis on its own. This is why every high school needs to have a mandatory life skills class. When kids don't know how to manage their money, they end up in debt. When they don't know how to pay their taxes, the IRS yells at them. There are things the school system can help. These are things the school system can help prevent. The school system can help prevent this by teaching the kids how to get a job, how to manage the money they get from that job, and how to pay taxes on the money from that job. I realize that many schools have vocational or magnet programs / classes. However, what I'm proposing is different. I should just stop looking up. I'm losing my place every time.
That's okay.
Everything looks up.
Great.
My proposal is for a course that serves as an introduction to life to help students explore areas of interest, identify areas of weakness and strength, and to feel better prepared to tackle life outside of high school. Now, earlier I mentioned changing a tire, a tidbit of knowledge that is just as necessary as finances, and as such should be taught in this proposed class. Of course, not just changing a tire, but changing an oil, albeit Tesla's trying to get rid of that. And other methods of car or home improvement. As for space, my school, Crooms, is getting 6, new concrete classroom portables, and Lord knows every other high school is more than big enough to fit these classes. And for conclusion, lack of a conclusion, as seamless as the rest of this presentation, I will once again leave you asking to put forth the effort and to install these classes and teach your students these basic practical skills.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
You make Crooms proud. Go Croomies. And based on all the 3 speakers this evening, I'm going to ask Mr. Godrow, our Executive Director of High Schools, to investigate that. And I've got the people's contact information so we can get back in touch with you all. Thank you very much. And I'll see you at Crooms campus. Tech Fest next. Okay. We'll see you. And that's all the public comment requests that I had at this point in time. Dr. Griffin, do you have any unfinished business or a superintendent's report?
Not this evening.
Okay. What I'd like to do now is recess this meeting for 10 minutes, please, so we can get set up for the rest. Thank you.
What was that boy's name? What was that boy's name?
I don't know. Quiet in the beginning.
I love that.
I'd like to reconvene our school board meeting, and at this point in time, turn it over to Dr. Griffin for a recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My recommendation is that the School Board of Seminole County enter the proposed final order adopting the ALJ's recommended order, reject Katie Studio LLC's exceptions, and dismiss Katie Studio's protest as untimely filed.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Beeman, our legal counsel at this point in time, to advise us as to our proceedings this evening. No.
Okay, certainly, board members. Tonight, we are looking at the entry of a final order in regards to a bid protest. As you know, bid protests are first heard by an administrative law judge with the Florida Division of Administrative Hearings. The ALJ then includes a recommended order to you that has findings of fact, conclusion of law, and a recommendation. And so the ALJ's recommended order in this case is included in the materials that have been provided to you for review, as has the exceptions filed by Katie Studios, LLC, and of course, the response to the exceptions on behalf of the superintendent. Those are all of the documents that are included in the agenda and in the backup. The representatives of the parties will have up to 15 minutes each to argue on behalf of their positions. Tonight, we have Ms. Christina Childers with Childers Law Firm, and she's arguing on behalf of Katie Studios. We also have Brittany Adams Long, who is with the Rady Law Firm in Tallahassee, arguing on behalf of the superintendent's recommendations. Once each party has had an opportunity to present to the board, then the board obviously will engage in and can engage in discussion, and we will address where the next steps are in regards to the entry of a final order on this issue.
Thank you.
And
Ms.
if there
Beeman,
are,
could you call the
yes, if there are no
first?
questions about the process, I will call first Ms. Childers to the podium.
Thank you.
Ms. Childers, please introduce yourself, and after that introduction, our clerk will start the timer. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christina Childers from Childers Law and representing Katie Studios this evening.
Thank you.
We're here today to address the exceptions that Katie Studios filed to the recommended order in relation to the bid protest for photography services in Seminole County. We submitted our exceptions to the recommended order and fully incorporate those exceptions into this argument as if fully argued herein. If you have any specific questions as to any one of the individual exceptions, please feel free to ask. Generally speaking, there were two arguments before the court below. The first was a timing issue, and the second was a more substantive, legal, and ethical issue. However, both of those issues are rooted in fairness. The first issue before the judge was the issue of equitable tolling, and this just means allowing a protest to be accepted that was not filed within the protest window. This idea was created in law because that 72-hour bid protest window is sometimes very harsh, and it doesn't take into account the protesters' inability to control kind of the outside events. Specifically, the case law states that a late filed petition should be accepted if a party has been misled or lulled into inaction, has in some extraordinary way been prevented from asserting his or her rights, or has timely asserted their rights in an alternate forum. The exception was created for cases with extraordinary facts. That is this case. Katie Studios did not just forget to file their bid protest. Katie Studios did not wait around, get upset at the ultimate result of the evaluation committee and then decide to file its protest. That's not what happened here. Specifically here is a kind of evaluation of the dates of what happened. And the school board's evaluation committee posted their notice of intended decision, which selected 7 of the 13 photography vendors, on September 28th of 2017. However, notably, before the notice of intended decision was actually filed, Jimmy Smith, who's the market vice president for Katie Studios, he found out on September 24th, which was 4 days before that notice of intended decision was posted, that Katie Studios was not selected. He immediately, on that Sunday, emailed Miss Lou Angel Louder, who's the buyer for the school board, and sought guidance, asked what happened, asked for further steps, asked what to do. That following Monday, the very next day, which was the 25th of September, Miss Louder and Mr. Smith spoke on the phone. Miss Louder told Mr. Smith, "I can't talk to you about what happened in the debriefing meeting. I can't tell you why you weren't selected." The evaluation committee shortlist meeting. "But what I can do is you can find out what happened, you can ask your questions, we can look over the score sheets of the evaluation committee at a debriefing meeting." And then they scheduled that debriefing meeting. And that debriefing meeting was scheduled for October 5th. Now, because the notice of intended decision was posted on the 28th, the 72-hour bid protest ended on October 3rd. So in order for him to find out what happened, he had to wait to October 5th. That's school board policy. But the timing to file a notice of bid protest ended on October 3rd. That's Florida statutes. And he relied on the school board member who he had multiple conversations with, who was reliable, who was a trustworthy member of the Seminole County School Board, to give him that information. Now, during their conversations on the phone and any emails they exchanged prior to the debriefing meeting, this 72-hour bid protest window was not discussed. However, at the debriefing meeting, he found out that a member of the school board's evaluation committee completely failed to grade Katie Studios' proposal. He found out at that meeting that it was also too late for him to do anything about it. And he was told that by members of the Seminole County School Board. In our exceptions, we explain that Florida statute requires in its written protest that you have to state with particularity in your formal written protest the facts behind your bid protest. And in the response, the school board correctly states that's the formal written protest, which is different than the notice of protest that you need the 72 hours to file. We understand those are two very different things. However, there was no way for Katie Studios to ever assume that a member of the school board's evaluation committee would have completely failed to grade their submitted proposal. There was no way to even assume that that could possibly happen. So because of the school board's policy, They were unable to find out what happened. And then when they did find out, it was too late. And they, again, were stuck, unable, and told they were unable to do anything. And then they got legal representation, and their legal representation said, wait, there's a doctrine. There's a fairness argument that we can make. That these actions of the school board are what misled you, what lulled you into an action. Ms. Louder, the same member of the school board, testified during the DOA hearings that what happened to Katie was that when he contacted the school board for the first time, it was too early to find out why Katie had not been shortlisted. And when Mr. Smith contacted Katie Studios the second time, which was at the debriefing meeting, it was too late to do anything about it. So relying on the school board's policy, they were kind of stuck in this catch-22. Too early, didn't do it right. Too late, now have the information, but you're stuck. Members of the school board can reject the findings of the judge if there's either not substantial competent evidence or if there's policy considerations that are essentially based on the opinions of the judge. Further, the members of the school board, the superintendent, you're the final authority. You're who select the vendors to be on this list. And we're not sitting here saying, pick Katie Studios to service all of Seminole County, make them your choice. That's not what this is. This is put them on the list. Fix this wrong that happened because they were not graded. This was not the case of the lazy protester that just failed to file their bid protest. This is a case of a company that trusted in the system and guidance of Seminole County School Board, as it had done in its prior dealings with the school board, because in Katie Studios' experience, Seminole County School Board was reliable and was trustworthy. The minute Mr. Smith found out that Katie Studios was not on the list, he emailed Ms. Louder. He talked to her the next day. He scheduled the debriefing meeting. He did everything that he could possibly do in order to find out what happened. Then, at that debriefing meeting, he was told there was nothing he could do and there was no way he could respond to the completely unfair, arbitrary, and unreasonable scoring of Katie Studios' proposal. This case is the exact reason why the deadline to protest should be told. To take into account the actions on the part of the school board's evaluation committee and the members of the school board that led Katie Studios into relying on the school board, misleading Katie Studios, and lulling Katie Studios into inaction. Now, I've spoke kind of vaguely about what happened and what that scoring process was. And although the second issue, that issue of substantive fairness, was not discussed in the exceptions, it's important to understand what it means and what happened. The judge found in the DOA hearing that how the school board's evaluation committee conducted its scoring process was arbitrary and capricious. Now, that's a legal term that means, in this instance, what it sounds like. It means that how the evaluation committee scored Katie Studios' proposal was arbitrary. They scored it wrong, and they scored it unfairly. Ms. Louder testified in the hearings that this was the first time she had ever had to experience people that were unhappy with the bidding process. And there's no wonder why. I would like to read some of the findings that speak directly to this point in order to highlight the exact injustice that occurred. As they stated, you have the recommended order in front of you. It begins on page 33, paragraph 80. It's the second sentence of that paragraph. And that sentence states, "The evidence in the record establishes that when scoring, the evaluation committee did not give Katie Studios' proposal reasonable, good faith consideration, nor was the score it received supported by facts or logic. Paragraph 81 states that every evaluator, i.e. Dr. Daniel, should have affirmatively reviewed and scored the proposal it submitted in response to the RFP. Katie Studios indisputably presented a complete and timely paper copy of its proposal to the school board, as well as copies on at least 8 USB drives. As demonstrated by the scores from 3 of the 4 evaluators, Katie Studios' proposal adequately responded to each of the 4 criteria that were to be scored. Therefore, as a matter of fairness and impartiality, every evaluation committee member should have fully evaluated Katie Studios' proposal. Paragraph 82 states that regarding how an individual evaluation committee member was to react upon receiving a blank USB drive, the RFP did not contain any instructions. However, the RFP certainly did not direct the evaluators to either refuse to score or score a proposal with all zeros. And then paragraph 83 states that the evaluation committee members clearly treated Katie Studios' proposal inconsistently. 2 of the 4 evaluators were initially given blank USB drives from Katie Studios. At the evaluation committee shortlist meeting, Ms. Lauder offered each evaluator another copy of Katie Studios' proposal to score, either the paper version or one accessible from another USB drive. One evaluator, Mr. Durius, was willing to and did fully score Katie Studios' proposal. The other evaluator, Dr. Daniel, declined to take advantage of this opportunity. Paragraph 83 goes on to state, having one evaluator use a replacement USB drive to score a proposal, while another evaluator refused to do the same, is not a consistent or sound manner in which to review a timely filed proposal in what should be a fair and impartial competitive solicitation process. The ALJ judge did not have to get to this second issue because he ruled on the 72 hours. But he did, because it was that shocking to him. And I just sat through what is quite impressive for a school board meeting. I spoke to multiple people about how friendly and united this school board seems to be. And these actions don't reflect that school board. These actions are arbitrary and capricious. That's not what it feels like or seems like this school board is. And the citizens of Seminole County, they rely on the school board to ensure that procedures are followed, that selections are made fairly and for the benefit of their children. Parents don't get all the information, and family members. We don't get all the information that the school board does. We get all the information that the school board gives us. You, the individuals and the members of the school board, you have the final authority to approve all vendors, and in this case, the list of photography vendors. You have the authority to fix this mistake. Use this authority to right this wrong. You can do this by adding Katie Studios back to the list of approved vendors. You can fix the arbitrary and capricious mistake made by one of your evaluation committee members.
And Ms. Childers, if you could wrap up, the 15 minutes is coming, it's over, but please do wrap up your argument.
Just one final sentence. You can fix this arbitrary and capricious mistake that was made by one of your committee members and show your citizens that the school board is fair and does not act in arbitrary ways. Thank you for your time.
And next I will call to the podium Ms. Brittany Long.
Above this, but good evening. I think I'm okay. Can you guys see me? Okay. My name is Brittany Adams Long. I'm from the Rady Law Firm in Tallahassee, and I'm representing the superintendent's recommendation here this evening. As you know, we're here tonight for you to make a final decision regarding KD Studios' bid protest to the award of contracts for yearbook and photography services. Just heard a lot about the scoring and the arbitrariness of that, but what we're here on is the ALJ's ruling that the protest was not timely, and he also ruled on Katie's argument about equitable tolling, where that would be basically give an excuse for not timely filing a protest. And the ALJ found that there was not an excuse. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But I want to talk a little bit about the technical process and what your role is here as a board in ruling on the recommended order. Ms. Beeman told you the basic administrative process, how it goes to DOA for an ALJ to hear the issues. The ALJ is an independent fact finder. So that's the ALJ's main role, is making findings of fact based on the evidence, the witnesses, everything before them, credibility of witnesses, et cetera. Based on that, the ALJ has two findings. One are the findings of fact, the other are the conclusions of law. He puts those in the recommended order. That recommended order then comes back before you to issue a final order. And each party has the opportunity to do exceptions. And in the exceptions is the opportunity for the parties to ask the board to change either findings of fact or conclusions of law. We're here on Katie's exceptions. We haven't filed any on the other side. We are just arguing, or not arguing, but we are considering the ALJ's findings of fact and conclusions of law from what Katie has asked for exceptions for. So the school board's review of a recommended order is limited. The school board, as Ms. Childers mentioned, related to findings of fact, the school board must uphold them if they're supported by what's called competent substantial evidence in the legal community. And basically what that means, if there's any evidence that's credible to support a finding of fact that was made by the ALJ, the school board has to uphold that fact. You can't change a fact that's supported by evidence. Conclusions of law are a little bit different. You can change conclusions of law that it's in your jurisdiction, and what that means is for conclusions of law that would be interpreting school board statutes, school board policies, that kind of thing, you can change those, but only if the school board's conclusion is as reasonable or more reasonable than the ALJ's conclusion, and your final order must state with particularity the reason for the change. And this is all important because it's not just a matter of saying we're going to fix a right or fix a wrong or something along those natures. You have to make your rulings within the confines of what the law allows you to do. So I'm going to, kind of what Ms. Childers did, address some overall themes in the exceptions, but I would remind you that when you are looking at exceptions, you have to look at each one. And is this finding a fact that they're taking exception to supported by the evidence or not? But I want to talk about kind of their overall themes. And basically, they're arguing the same thing that they argued below to the ALJ. There is no dispute the protest was late, and there's no dispute that Katie is arguing that the doctrine of equitable tolling applies, and to excuse its late filing. And it's equitable tolling, we agree, is when the agency has misled or lulled a person into an action. So typically, that's some kind of affirmative action that an agency does to suggest that a person could, miss a deadline or something like that. It has to be, it's not just, doesn't say anything or anything like that. The agency has to actually do something. Before I get, though, into the equitable tolling, I want to talk about the process for a bid protest and the timeline so you understand, how that works. An agency posts a notice of intent to award after a competitive solicitation. At that time, a vendor has 72 hours from that posting to file a notice of intent to protest. That notice is just that. It is just a notice, one-page document, we plan to protest, or however you want to say it. This is not only under the school board's policy, but under Florida statutes that applies to all agencies. It's the same for everybody. So that notice basically preserves the right to file a formal written protest. That is due within 10 days of the notice. That is the document that includes the arguments, the basis, statements with particularity on, what the basis for it is. As I said, this is not something that's just happened at the school board level. These are statutory deadlines for all agencies. So every vendor at the conclusion of a competitive solicitation, once a posting has been posted, has that 72 hours. So it's probably going to be very rare that somebody knows what they're protesting, but they have to file that notice, and they have to do their public record request or whatever they do to try to find out the basis for that protest, which they then include in the formal written document. So to argue that they could not have timely filed a notice of protest because they didn't learn about that until they did a debriefing after the time period, I mean, that's just the way the timelines work. You have to file that notice. It has to be done within 72 hours. Again, unless this doctrine of equitable tolling applies. In this case, what we've put in our response and what you would see for looking at the documents, the RFP references the policies and the statutes, as does the notice of intended award. Because the school board has in its own policy the same requirement that's in statute, and that is referenced in the RFP and in the notice of intent to award. Those are formal documents that put all vendors on notice of these timelines. And then there was no evidence presented that any staff member made any representation that there would be some kind of change in those timelines. If you look at the testimony and what we put in our response, the agency's representative just wasn't familiar with it. There was testimony at one point that he didn't click on the link to the policy that explained it. So basically, he was unaware that he had to file that. That does not fit under the doctrine of equitable tolling. Also, as far as the scheduling of the debriefing meeting, Katie's representative contacted the procurement officer after there was a shortlist posting, but before there was a notice of intent to award. At that point in time, the procurement was still going on. So the procurement officer cannot talk to one vendor about an ongoing procurement while they're still haven't made a final decision yet. So they made a debriefing meeting just from all the testimony, just based on available schedules. It happened to be after the 72 hours, but there was certainly no suggestion that the procurement officer did anything wrong by setting that debriefing meeting when she did. It certainly wasn't intentionally to mislead anybody. And Katie's representative also testified he did not ask about filing a protest or mention a protest in any of those conversations. So the ALJ found that none of the actions of the school board staff misled Katie about the time for filing a protest and did not lull Katie into an action, and that's what we're here on tonight. Instead, the ALJ found Katie was unaware of the time to protest, even though, as I've already mentioned, it was in all of the relevant documents and available for them to review. There's also some case law we cited in our response that says if that information is properly in the formal documents, some kind of vague communication with an agency doesn't trump what's formally advising the vendors. So we think all of the exceptions relating to equitable tolling should be rejected for those reasons. There are a couple other things I want to touch on because, again, you have to rule on each individual finding of fact, and so they're not all based on the exact same issue. Some of the findings, or some of the exceptions to the findings of fact, object not to the actual finding, but to inferences that could be drawn from them, and that's not the proper standard. I mean, the ALJ can draw inferences, but that's not what they're arguing here. They're arguing that this finding of fact could have some kind of inference. And I'll give you some examples. Katie takes exception to quotes from the statute, quotes from the RFP, things like that. Those are just accurate findings of fact. They can't be overturned. There were also some exceptions where Katie argued that the ALJ looked at the wrong thing because the ALJ determined that the protest was not timely. And so Katie says, well, we didn't argue it wasn't timely. We agree with that. We argued that equitable tolling should apply. So first of all, just making a finding that it was untimely is just an accurate finding. There's not even any disagreement about that. And you certainly have to make that argument before even reaching the equitable tolling argument. So there's nothing wrong with that finding. Also, the ALJ specifically addressed in the recommended order and several times during the actual hearing the equitable tolling issue and reiterated what Katie's arguments were, that he understood them, and he ruled on them. So those exceptions also should be denied. There was one exception which we put in the response, number 7, that we agree that there wasn't evidence to support a specific sentence in the ALJ's ruling. This was exception number 7, and the ALJ found that Mr. Smith, something along the lines of concluded from not being on the short list that it would not be awarded the contract. And I've looked through all of the testimony, and I didn't see any specific language where he made that actual statement or conclusion. So I do think that exception, to that extent, that one sentence could be deleted from the final order because it's not supported by competent substantial evidence. This exception, however, has no impact on the outcome of the case. What you're looking for is whether the school board misled or lulled Katie into inaction. Whether he concluded from looking at a short list is not relevant to that point. If you want me to go through each exception, I can do that, or I can rely on what we've written and answer any specific questions that you have.
Now the time within the meeting that we have a discussion.
Yes, at the conclusion of Ms. Wong's argument is the opportunity for discussion, and from there, a determination as to how the board would like to proceed.
I'm finished
You're
unless
done?
you have any
Okay.
questions for me.
Dr. Griffin, could you please reiterate your recommendation? It's been a few minutes since that time. And then I'll ask the board if there's any discussion point.
Based on the discussion, I'm going to amend my recommendation to accept the arguments of Ms. Long on each of the exceptions, which includes exception number 7, and adopt a final order consistent with counsel's arguments.
Do we have to have a new motion
Yes.
on
so
that? Do we need to remove?
Correct. Withdrawal of the recommendation and the motion that we started with, and then a motion on the superintendent's revised recommendation.
I'll withdraw my original motion.
And the second.
Okay. And so, Dr. Griffin, your new recommendation was as stated. So do we have a new motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So we have a new recommendation, a motion, and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
And Chairman,
Yes.
what will happen is that I will prepare the final order for presentation to the board based on the revised recommendation and the vote at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further business to come before the board at this time? None? This meeting stands adjourned. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.